down here from the main drive for down for the feeder housing itself, this is the main pulley for the feeder housing. Behind here, there is a clutch. Now, if you see any discoloration or anything like that, please make your service department aware of this, because that means this clutch is actually slipping itself, and get it repaired as soon as possible, because this is the drive for the actual feeder housing itself, the feeder chains. Behind here, there is a grease nipple, but this grease nipple is only for the two separate halves of the clutch. They're not actually a bearing itself. So when you do grease that, only grease it as and when is required, and don't grease it anymore. If you do, then the slip clutch will no longer be able to operate as it should do. For the cab filter, which is up there on the left-hand side of the cab, when you do come to do the season and when it's up for a service, lift that panel up. Inside there is the filter for the cab, and you have got the option of changing for different styles of filters, so look in the operator's manual for that. So as we come back down the drive from the front of the machine, we do have some tensioners. This style here is what we call an end-on-end tensioner. So in other words, the two ends of the actual settings there must be just touching. That means that tensioner there is set correctly. As we go further back, there are a few different types of tensioners, but while we're on the tensioners themselves, don't forget there's also grease nipples on the tensioners themselves. As we go back, we've got another one, which is a gold tube style. So with the gold tube style, that one there, the tube must only just be able to rotate. That means the chain is then tensioned correctly. We do have a couple of these around the machine, but that's how we do it. If you do need to adjust it, do have a look in the book as to how to tension it up. Same again, we've got a couple of grease nipples here and there. Coming underneath the machine here, we have grease nipples at the bottom of the unloading auger. We do have another one which is further forward. This one here, obviously this grease nipple here, and then another one further up. While we're on the actual unloading tube as well, another good idea is if you have been operating in dirty conditions, so in other words the actual crop is moist, take the covers off and check inside and make sure that you haven't actually got any material stuck to the outside of the tube, and that'll make sure that the tube is running at its full capacity. So while we're on the unloading tube, we do have the chain drive here for the unloading tube. This particular machine is not fitted with the auto lube, so you will need to lubricate this with the correct chain lube. These chains are O-ring chains, so they do need correct type of lubrication to keep the O-rings nice and moist. If you have the auto lube, which is a little brush in a bottle, that bottle must be filled with the correct type of oil to lubricate the chain correctly. So while we're done here as well, you can see now we have this style of tensioner, which is what we call an overlap tensioner. And here what we're actually looking for is the gauge to physically be overlapped. Now you can just see there's the tab as how far it needs to go, and that means that tensioner there is, spring tension is correct. Also a couple of other grease nipples and that, but while we're on the fan drive itself, here's the grease nipple for the fan variator, and here the same thing applies to all variators. Is when you grease it, make sure you go to minimum maximum to grease the whole variator itself. So this is the shear bolt for the unloading. When you get to the beginning of season, before you start every year, it's a good idea to check, make sure that it hasn't been damaged in any way. When you do replace it, please make sure you torque it up to the correct torque that's in the book, and also replace it with the correct style of bolt. So on the battery box itself, we do have the greasing interval that you have, so a nice little sticker on this side. We have the same thing on the right hand side of the combine, and that also relates to what's in the operator's manual. But here in the battery box, if I just open that, it is only a single battery, and then it is 12 volt. Here we have the isolator, and then I'll talk about this little light here while we're at it. That little light there is to do with the after treatment, so the exhaust after treatment. If the light is on, that means the isolator must stay on. Only when the light is off is it then possible to turn the actual isolator off to disconnect the battery itself. So light on, isolator on, light off, only then turn the isolator off. If you turn it off too soon, the exhaust after treatment is not going to have its correct cycle. So in this cycle it's actually cooling down something, so be very aware of that once you actually turn the machine off. So wait until the light's off before you turn anything else off. So as we go further back down the machine, obviously there's a number of other belts you need to keep an eye on. So some tensioners here with some lengths of spring again. And as we go up the machine, we do have another way of lowering the cutter bar in an emergency. There we can actually screw that, and then that will allow the cutter bar to drop in an emergency. Do be aware though that if you must put it back to its correct position, otherwise you won't be able to raise the cutter bar if you need to go to work. Further up the machine, right at the very top, there is another tensioner there for the main drive. That tensioner is also a gold tube style, so do have a look in the operator's manual on how to tension that. But that one there is also a crucial thing, is to actually make sure you have the correct amount of gap, etc. for the belt. So do make sure you have a look in the book, and that is your main drive between the engine and the hydrostat itself. Otherwise, those belts up there that are V belts, just keep an eye on them. If you do see anything that's worn, etc., got a nick out of it, do get them replaced as soon as possible.